All right, we are live. Let's see. Just making sure. Yes. Okay. So YouTube has us as live. Hopefully, hey Rob, hopefully the problem that I had last week with my mic and the lagging says I have an excellent connection. I had to do an update. Then I had to do another update just before I went live. So I was really worried that going with that other update, that it was going to cause me a problem. Okay, so yes, audio sound check, great. Okay, and we have what, Joseph from Orc from Orc, wasn't that what it was? Anyways, hello Joseph, hello Rob. Okay, today I decided I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to go live today, and then things in my schedule changed. I wasn't ready to go live. So again, today I won't be on camera, but that's okay. We're still live. You're going to see all the paint and stuff, and that's what's the most important. I decided that I would look at the Daler Rowney travel set that was sent to me by Tara, who is also one of my mods and one of my patrons. So Tara sent the Daler Rowney Aquafine Travel Set. Has 12 colors in it that you see here. I'm going to swatch those out, and then I want to kind of play with them and see what I can do and see how they are. Now, I was checking the back of the box. It gives you the color information, but what it does not give you is any of the pigment information. And I was like, you know me, I want to know, do they have pigment information for me? And I'm sorry. It was just all of a sudden it wasn't showing me. Now it's showing me. So anyways, I wanted to know the pigment information. And so I looked that up on Daler Rowney's website. I did pin that. It's pinned at the top of chat. So I'm going to write mine down as I go because I like to see the pigment. I like to see what the pigment is of the paint. So I'll be writing those in. In this 12 set, we have Chinese white, lemon yellow, gamboge hue, cadmium red hue, alizarin crimson hue, cobalt blue hue, ultramarine blue dark, hooker's green dark, yellow ochre, raw sienna, burnt sienna, and Payne's gray. This sounds like it would be a great set to take with me. Recently I went plein air painting and I absolutely loved it. I can't wait to get back out there again. I'm going to be doing that again soon, hopefully. And I think if I can figure it out, once we have everything is in bloom and coming up in the yard and stuff like that, I might do some plein air painting outside and actually stream it right from outside via my phone. I know we can stream with our phones. I don't usually stream with my phone. The one you're looking at right here up in the corner, that is actually my phone. So I know that the quality, of the picture will be fine. But yeah, if I can figure it out and I have a microphone to put on my phone so that I have to test it and make sure that you're not picking up wind, because I can't stand to listen to that. So I don't want to subject you to it if I don't care for it. So anyways, that may be something that's coming. But I thought this was fantastic. Now one of the things I will say, you can take this little pan of your paints out and have large areas for mixing. But good luck getting this out. I had to grab this to actually pry it out because it would not pop out. Now, will it come out easier now that it's been out once? I don't know. I'm not going to stick it back in there because today I might want to mix on this. So just so you know, you can take it out. And with my new Patron box that I got, this would be easy to set right in there for painting. And I have a few small palettes. We're going to cover a few of those smaller palettes that I have for plein air painting, I think, in the coming weeks. Just in case, if that's something that interests you, then it'll give you some palette ideas. And if not, it will let you see the paints, and you may be interested in the, not necessarily plein air painting, but you may definitely be interested in those palettes. And I think simplifying your palette, because I have, huge palettes that have tons of colors. And then I have a few that are only like, 12 or wait, I'll show you the one I just made up. It's only this big, and you would not believe how many colors I packed in that palette. So anyways, that's to come. But today, let's talk about these Aquafine paints. I've never used them before, so I'm excited to use them. I am using the Bee Inspired watercolor paper again. I've linked this below. You can get this at Walmart. It's really, if you don't mind working on a cellulose paper, this is very economical. I find that it doesn't buckle or curl too much for me. So my chat, sorry guys, my chat was not scrolling. For swatching and playing around and just getting started and trying something and diving into the world of watercolor, this is not a bad pad. I would definitely recommend this before I would recommend you guys know how I feel about the Canson XL watercolor paper. I'm not a fan, but this I like a whole lot better. I would recommend giving this a try. And of course, there's also the step up from this, and that would be the 100% cotton bee watercolor paper. You can find that on Amazon. While I haven't linked to it specifically below, I do have a link to Amazon below. So there we go. We have the Bee Inspired paper. That's what we're working on today. And I'm going to be using my silver brushes again, my SilverWhite, because I want to keep trying those out. I'm not done with those yet. But this comes with, and I kind of laugh at these little brushes because unless I was just doing sketching with the watercolor, I don't know what I am using that little tiny, it's a size 4, but I don't know what I'm using that little brush for. Details, yeah, maybe. Again, like I said, if I was sketching with my watercolors, then I think this would be a decent brush. I haven't tried it, but a good size. So that just fits, it just actually clips right in there. There's little teeth that hold it. This here, I mean, I guess you could put some water in. Again, if you were doing some little, okay, if I can get that off, there we go. If you're doing some little sketching, you just have one that you could rinse and one for clean water. And I guess that would be good enough, but there's no way that is, you see on the side view up there, there's no way that's deep enough to, for any significant rinsing of your brush. So maybe I'll swatch. I'll do the swatch with this brush so I can test it out. And then when I do the rest of the stuff today, I'm going to use my SilverWhite brushes. So let's start with, I told you all the colors. Let's look at the pigment information. So Chinese white is PW5 and PW6. And lemon yellow is PY3. Gamboge hue is PY155 and PR242. All right, I'm going to do more of those as we go. And yeah, see, I agree, Rob. Rob says for years I've used cheap watercolor brushes and got a good set and will not go back. Brushes matter with watercolor. Yeah, I love my Silver Black Velvet brushes. As you guys know, those are like the brush for me. I have yet to find one that I like more than that. Although, I will say that I got them in yesterday. I wanted to show them to you guys today. And one set was damaged and the other set, they sent me the wrong ones. They sent me the ones I already have. So I have to exchange those. So I'm going to be waiting for them to send that back to me. But they're both on their way. I'm just cleaning out the sizing that was in this brush to keep it stiff. And if you want to protect your brushes, there's a good tip. If you want to protect your brushes, if you have the Masters soap and you clean your brushes and you get a little extra soap on them and then you just reshape the points and let them dry, that's not going to damage your brushes. That soap will dry and they'll stay firm, like when you first purchase them and they're, you know, your bristles are hard. It'll do that. And then, you know, if you want to put, say, a sleeve back on it to protect it or whatnot, and you're taking them out and you're traveling with them, that is a great way to protect your bristles. And then, of course, whenever you're ready to use them, you're just going to swish it in your water and clean it all out. And there you go. All right, tardy slip for Tara. So there was a quick little tip for you. Let's start with the Chinese white. I want to see, I'm going to go to full screen now so that you have more of the colors. All right, so we're going to start with, let's give them a spritz. I don't know how much I have left in this. I'm just going to give these a spritz of water. Yeah, my little spray bottle is about empty. I was supposed to fill it before I started and I forgot. There we go. So just giving them a little spritz to let them start activating. I don't know if these are ones that, you know, how easily they activate. I guess we're going to find out. Well, pretty well. As I touch the Hooker's green there. Okay. So the Chinese white, now their star rating for light fastness is on a 4-star scale. And I will let you know what those are. But the Chinese white is semi-opaque and it is a 3-star. They say they do have a few colors that are 4-star. But 4-star, 3-star, if it starts to get to 2, I'm probably not going to use it because it's just going to disappear. So anyhow, let's start with the, oh, they reactivate really easily. Just to see how, I know you're not going to see it very much on the paper, but we're going to see how well it will cover our black line here. Okay, so I'm guessing the reason that you have this in this set, I would not have a white, or I would have like a gouache in that spot. So if this is like a set that I like for travel, I may pop that half pan out and just put in a little half pan of like some white gouache, something like that. This, I guess, would be good to, if you wanted to mix pastel colors, you could mix your Chinese white with your other colors and you'd get more of a pastel. And it's you know, it's semi-opaque. So it's not going to make your color completely opaque, but it will add in some of that white to desaturate it and give you more of a pastel. So next up we have lemon yellow. Lemon yellow is transparent and it is a 3-star. Yeah, these re-wet really easily. And I'm not doing it where the color fades. I'm going to show you that. We're going to do that on a larger piece of paper because I really want to test and see. I want to see how these travel and I want to see how they react to salt. So we're going to kind of give that a test because that I think is something that even if I took these out in the field, I would have a small container of salt and it's something that I might want to use. So next is Gamboge Hue. There are a lot of hues in this set. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 hues. So we have Gamboge Hue. That is a 3-star and it is transparent as well. Oh yeah, just from that spritz that I put on these, They're very, it almost feels gummy, but that's, I'm sure, because I don't have it. I haven't worked the pans down where I can have the water in it and like swish it around in there. It's just the very top of the pan, and they're very full pans. They're definitely like, most of them are crowned over. So we have our gamboge hue. All right, so next up is the cadmium red hue, and the cadmium red is PR 242. Again, I've got this 242. I have this linked at the top of the chat where you can see all of this pigment information and also the star ratings and the transparencies, because that's not shown on the packaging. Only the names and the numbers of the colors are shown on the packaging. So of course I wanted to know what they were. And I know that some of you like that too. So next is the alizarin crimson hue, and that one is PR 176. This is just the little swatch card to put in here. If I was doing a big swatch of this, I would have like its star rating, so I knew how light fast it was. I would have, you know, the little square to show whether it's transparent or opaque, and how, where in between it falls. But just for the purposes of this, this is fine. And then we have the cobalt blue hue. And cobalt blue hue is a mixture. So we do have a few here that are single pigment colors, which I like. If I'm going to take a palette, a limited palette of 12 colors, I prefer to have all single pigment colors because I'm going to get much cleaner mixes that way. And that's why it's important to me to know your pigment information and what's in your colors. So the cobalt blue hue is PB 29, which is actually ultramarine blue, and it's mixed with, I just looked and I lost it right there, PW6, which is titanium white. And not surprisingly, they say that it is semi-transparent or like semi-opaque. So let's do these three and then we'll go next. That way there we're not just rattling off a bunch of pigment information. We can see some colors too. No, a hue? No, that great question. Let me just pop that up there. That is a great question. So no, the hue is a pigment that looks like the original. So cadmium red, you know, would have cadmium in it, but the cadmium red hue does not have cadmium in it. It looks like cadmium red, and they call it cadmium red hue because it is not the actual cadmium red pigment, but it is something that is very close, and it is something they use as a substitute. So when you see hue, it's going to be on, like, a lot of times it'll be on your cobalts, on your cadmiums. I see here we've got a alizarin crimson hue. That may be because alizarin crimson, the original pigment is fugitive, and this is something that is going to be more light fast because this is a 3-star. So again, they can use a hue for that as well. So I hope that answered that question. All right, next up is the alizarin crimson hue. And this was PR 176. Look at that color. That's pretty. I can't wait to see how these, I want to see how they travel in a wet wash. So we're going to check that out. Oh, thanks. I hope so. Sometimes I learn something new just, you know, from chatting with you guys. I love the chat. All right, cobalt blue hue, which again is PB29, which is typically your ultramarine. And then PW6, which is titanium white. So I would expect this one might granulate, and that's something that we're going to see. We're going to do stuff that's bigger and see what we get. All right, so next, oh, and so far this little brush, it holds its point really well. It's got a great snap to it. If you can see that, like it has great snap back. That's a decent little brush that comes in this set. Again, I could see it being very useful if you were doing some like urban sketching and you just took this little palette out and a small sketchbook like I have, you know, like my little Paul Rubens sketchbook. I could just slide that palette right in here, and as long as I have a little bit of water, I've got everything I need right there. All right, so next up is the ultramarine blue dark, and they do have an ultramarine blue light, but this one is dark, and it is, like I said, PB29. So given that, like, I don't know that I would have preferred, if, you know, if I were setting this setup, I would have preferred to have a phthalo blue versus cobalt that's using the exact same pigment as my very next color. I mean, yes, this is, you know, this is darker, that is lighter, but what's the point? I have this and I have a Chinese white in here already. I can make that. So I don't know. There's my thought on that. And you see they're, I mean, they're very similar. It's just a lighter version of this. So that would be something that I think if I were going to use this palette as one of my plein air palettes, I would probably pop this one out and substitute it with a phthalo, because we already have two yellows. We have the two reds. We don't actually have two that are, we have two cool blues. We don't have a warmer blue, or wait, no, we have, no, I said that backwards. Anyways, we don't have two blues that are opposite, warm and cool. So we have the warmer, they lean towards red. We have the warmer ones. We want a cooler one that's going to lean towards green. Right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. The blues always confuse me. I always get blues backwards. Oh, so Hooker's Green Dark. Hooker's Green Dark is... Okay, this is a three pigments to this color. We have PY3, and then we have PG7, and we have PV19. And oh, did I tell, the ultramarine blue dark is 3-star, and the cobalt blue hue is also 3-star. The ultramarine blue dark is transparent. The cobalt blue hue is semi-transparent, which makes sense because you have titanium white in there. And then Hooker's Green is also 3-star, and it is semi-transparent. And let's go grab a couple of these. The yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is PY42. That's pretty standard for yellow ochre. The raw sienna is PBR7. Again, that's what I would expect. The burnt sienna. Why am I not seeing burnt sienna? Oh, right there. Burnt sienna ooh, so the burnt sienna is PR 101. That's another color that tends to granulate, so I'll be interested to see that. And then Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray, we have PBK 7 and PB 29. So it is Mars Black and Ultramarine mixed together. And Payne's Gray is 3-star opaque. They say that that one is completely opaque. The burnt sienna is semi-opaque, and that is 4 stars. So that one is 4 stars. The raw sienna is transparent, and that is 3 stars. And then our yellow ochre is semi-transparent, and that one is 3 stars as well. So there's all of your pigment and light fast ratings for these paints. We'd be able to make some nice greens, mix up some more nice greens from that. No problem. Yellow ochre. There we go. And I'll probably come back later on my own time and put like the star rating, and you know, I can see the transparency from my swatch because I put the black lines through, but I'll probably put their star ratings on there. But all of these were 3 stars with the exception of the burnt sienna. Yeah, the burnt sienna. That was it. All the rest are 3 stars. So that was raw sienna. This is burnt sienna. And then, of course, we have Payne's Gray. So there is my little swatch card. Bring those a little closer so you guys can see. Rinse out that little brush. All right, so there are the colors. And you can see this one looks like we should get some granulation. I know PR 101 normally does. The ultramarine blue usually does. So because this is ultramarine blue in here, the cobalt blue hue also should. And cobalts are also another pigment that usually if you have a cobalt, that tends to be a granulating color as well. Okay. So let's take this. I'm just going to set it like this, and I'm going to mix right in the palette. And I'm going to grab my SilverWhite brush. And I want to see, I'm not going to do, obviously, I'm not going to do anything with the Chinese white as far as this goes. But I want to see if I wet them. I want to wet an area and get that nice and wet. I want to see how these are going to travel. And look at that, has just taken off. Can you see that going? Wow, that really took off. That took off quite well. So yeah, I want to see how it travels. And the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to let that set for a minute, but I'll be coming back to it. I'm going to put some salt in there in just a minute down at this end because I want to see how they react to salt too. All right, next up is the gamboge hue. And I don't know how well you guys can see this. With the darker colors, you're going to start seeing it a lot easier. But these are definitely traveling in a wet wash. So there's our gamboge. And I just have some salt here that I already took out. I just want to put a little bit of salt in those just to see how will they react. And this is actually Himalayan sea salt. Happened to be what I had up here. And different salts will give you different results. So if you have like sea salt, kosher salt, regular, Morton's when it rains it pours salt, or like I said kosher salt, didn't I? Like I said, the sea salt, kosher salt, I have the Himalayan sea salt, and then the regular table salt. They will all give you different. You could do them all the same color and you're going to get different results with different salts. So one day you just don't know what you want to do. Grab some salt and play. And it also, when you put the salt, when you drop the salt, will have different effects. So next we have our cadmium red hue. So that one, that kind of like hit the paper and stayed. It's traveling a little bit in the water. We'll see how much that takes off. And then next up, and this is really wet. Like when I set this down, this is a really wet wash. I can see it's glossy. It's not even matte. It is, you guys can see that it's glossy when I'm setting these colors in. So next we have our alizarin crimson hue. That one definitely went. These move. If you don't like watercolors that take off on you in your wet washes, then this might not be something that's for you. But if you like that effect, that could be something that definitely is a plus. Just sprinkling a little bit of salt in both of these. The paper, if you can see like right here, it's curved up just a little bit because that's the only part of that paper that's wet. Now, if I would have taped this down, or if I would have wet the back and set it down on my desk, I wouldn't be having this issue. So there's definitely ways that you can avoid what's happening right now. But it does tend to flatten itself back out. So there's that. All right, next up is the cobalt blue hue. Keep wanting to put my brush down like I'm going to do the salt, and I don't even have color down there. That one did not run away like the alizarin crimson did. And then, very similarly, you're going to have the ultramarine blue dark. Now that one took off a little bit more, and it could be because there's no titanium white in this one. So you see it's pooling there. It is curled up slightly. I'm just going to kind of hold that there for a second. Once I start wetting the other side of the paper, it seems to, like last time I was doing stuff on this one, last week, when I wet the other part of the paper, it kind of leveled itself out. Okay, put our salt in there, and that kind of went all in one area. I'm going to kind of sprinkle it around a little bit. Now I also wanted to see, I'm going to do another swatch here real quick of this ultramarine. And this swatch is to see how well does it granulate. Because this is definitely a color that normally would granulate. So I'm going to get a nice wet wash of that. And just leave it, because the salt will affect this over here. And sometimes salt doesn't have as much effect. It's interesting to test it out and experiment for yourselves. Sometimes salt won't have as much of an effect on a granulating color as it will in a non-granulating color. So that's something to try out and see for yourself. All right, so next up we have the Hooker's Green Dark. And I want to see that one. So that one's taking off. Then it's yellow ochre. Now the only information, I just grabbed the yellow ochre, but I didn't have water down first. The only information that they didn't give on that chart that I linked was whether or not a color was staining, which also can be good to know. If you put a color down and you try to lift it, you know what I mean? If you need to lift it back out for any reason, it could be important to know if that color is going to stain on you or not. Because if you're going to want to do some lifting, you might want to pick a different color. So, yeah. But I will say that this paper, I mean, normally if I was doing, see, this has already kind of started to level itself back. There's a little bit of warping in here. But 50 sheets for right around, I'm sure it varies depending on where you live, but for right around $10. it's great for doing stuff like this. I do not feel bad about throwing stuff at this, you know, piece of this paper and it not becoming a masterpiece. So yeah, it's not that bad. And like I said, there's ways to take care of this. If I would have wet the back of this first and set it on my desk, it would not be buckling and stuff when I'm adding the water. And I can do that next time. I can show you. I'll grab a piece because I'm going to grab a piece in a minute, and I'm going to paint up. I think I'm going to try some like kind of like abstract like hydrangea or something like that. We'll see. We'll see. But I want to paint something with them. So next we have our raw sienna. And that's going to be this guy right here. So you see, at first I'm just tapping the brush to it to see how much it's going to move, because that's going to give me a good idea when I'm working with some, you know, working in a painting that's wet and wet. If I set this down, is it going to travel all the way across the painting? Like that alizarin crimson is going to go far. Now this raw sienna, which is PBR 7, I don't know if it's just dried up a little bit. Let's get that. There we go. Yeah, I think my pan was just drying up a little bit. I will say that I'm not noticing a ton of granulation in this ultramarine blue, which is also really good to know, because sometimes you don't want that granulation. And say if I was using my Daniel Smith palette, my ultramarine blue is going to granulate. But if I didn't want that, I could grab this and use this ultramarine blue. It's really doesn't seem to be granulating that much. And that was a very wet wash. So we'll let that finish drying, but it doesn't seem to be granulating too much. All right, next up we have the burnt sienna, and that is PR 101. And this is the one I was telling you typically as well, just like ultramarine blue. This tends to granulate, this color, this pigment. It's not taking off too quickly. These kind of tests are important. Like if you have your watercolor palettes at home and you do some of these type of tests, it provides you a lot of valuable information. Now I'm going to do another one down here just like I did the first with the ultramarine, because I want to see. So I'm just laying down a really wet wash. I'm going to come back in with a bunch of pigment. And I want that to be really wet, because if I'm going to get the granulation, I need to have a wet pigmented wash on here. And then as it dries, that's when it'll start to granulate and separate apart. Okay, I'm going to do the last one, which is Payne's Gray, and then I'll put salt on all three. Now, Payne's Gray is prominently PBK 7, and that is Mars Black. And it's Lamp Black. Excuse me. PBK 7 is Lamp Black. I'm thinking of PBK. Well, look at that take off. I'm thinking of PBK 11. That's Mars Black. And that's very granulating. Lamp Black, PBK 7, is like one of your darkest blacks. Look at that take off. I get closer and it just is spreading even more. So it's got to be, well, you see it ran around the pool of water, but just took off. This instantly is looking almost dried into the paper. It's looking very matte, like it just absorbed right in. All right, let me get the salt for these guys. This one, I'm going to go back over this one more time just because it may have dried a little bit too much for the salt to give us the similar results that we would get from everything else. All right. So I'm not going to swatch this one here because it's not Mars Black, and Lamp Black is not necessarily as granulating. So I'm going to set these aside and let them dry. But already look at the ultramarine blue with the granulation. I mean, the effects from the salt that's starting to happen there. Very little up there on that yellow ochre on the right. And it's hard to see the other two yellows. But we're going to let that set. I'm going to put this aside. Oh, first I need to grab another piece of paper. Okay, and we're going to let this set to dry, and we will come back and take a look at that. But I bet that Payne's Gray would make some really nice cloudy trees and distant fog, and I bet that would make a really nice scene. Okay, let's see what we can do with some stuff. One of the things I wanted to do was mix up, and we're going to do so I can show you. Let's see some of the mixes we can get. I want the alizarin crimson. Oh, I do. Well, that palette does not bead up too badly, which I love. It drives me crazy when a palette beads up. Take some alizarin crimson. And I'm going to add to that some ultramarine blue. There we go. That's a nice purple. I was holding this palette. It's not connected. They're not connected. I think I'm going to do that again. Alizarin crimson. And this time I'm just going to take a little bit less. So we have like a magenta type color. All right. Now let's take the cobalt blue. there's a little dot on the palette. Was what you're seeing here and here, from like it being in the mold. A bit more of this Chinese white. See how we get more of a pastel? So that Chinese white, you can definitely use it to make some pastel colors. Of course, you can just thin your color down a lot too, and also end up with, yes, I just got my, I can't believe I just did that. I just got my palette dirty. I'm not really worried about it. All right. I want some of these colors for my hydrangea. And I'm also going to want some greens. So let's look at some greens we can mix. Let's take our hooker's green. It's a little bit of beading up there. I have a feeling that's going to stain. And I'm going to pull a little bit of this burnt sienna. I want to mute some of this down. There we go. We got a little bit darker right there. Be a nice leaf color. You can see that hooker's green definitely stains. Definitely stains your brush. And I want to take one and warm it up a little bit. Okay. So one of the things that I had thought about, and I left my other mister downstairs, didn't I? I did. My small one I left downstairs. I wanted really controlled spray. But I have this one. I just need to fill it up a little bit. Give me just a second. That was a long reach. I'm just filling my spray bottle up with some more distilled water. Okay. So I want to do some kind of abstract hydrangeas. So I was thinking if I just spray in a concentrated area, hydrangeas are big, round, and then I want to take and just sort of, well, I'm splattering it all over my paper, but that's okay. This brush really splatters. Really splatters. Not going to worry about it, but it really... Yeah, if I just tap the bristles themselves. And I may have put too much water down when I initially sprayed it. I don't know. You're seeing this like for the first time. I've never tried it before. So you get to see it live. We're experimenting together. All right. So we're just going to kind of let that dry. And I was supposed to wet the back to show you how it would stop it from buckling. But it looks like by the time, we're going to have plenty of time for me to be able to show that to you still. Let's try one here with a little less. I said a little less. That's a huge puddle. I didn't want that much. Maybe pull some of this blue. Oh, that's a nice color for hydrangea right there. This one, not so much. And it's because there's too much water, but we might be able to savor. I'm just blotting up some of that water, and that's going to give me some lighter sections, which hydrangea would have. And then we'll come back some of our dark. Because we know that alizarin crimson likes to move. So we'll come back with that and see how that does for us. I think I want this a little thicker. There's too much water in this. So I'm just going to make sure I dry my brush off. That's a bit more opaque. I think for this one, we're going to have to keep layering it up because it's definitely still wet. I do love these SilverWhite the SilverWhite brush definitely holds its point well. And I'm trying to be very easy when I put in some of this darker color because it has that alizarin crimson, and we know from our swatch how well it's going to take off. So just trying to keep that so I can get some areas that are dark, but it'll keep traveling. So I'll have to keep building that up until that paper gets a little drier, and then it's not going to move so much. And our hydrangea can have, so they have like the sawtooth leaves that are kind of almost like heart shape at the top, but they've got the edges are very serrated. And you can definitely see the veining in them. This is a pretty big leaf for this little hydrangea. I think it got carried away. I'm just pulling out, lifting a little bit here. These may disappear. They may not stay as prominent as that, but we have a leaf. We can build our hydrangea larger if we needed to or wanted to. Perhaps a smaller leaf on this side. And I have some mixing of those colors because it was still very wet, but I'm not worried about it. And that's still so wet, it's just going to move back in. But you can see we are getting some of it here. It stayed. At this point, I'm just playing. Is it fabulous? No, not by a long shot. It's really dark. And most of them, I think the veining is lighter, and the leaf itself is darker. This one it lifted, it worked really well. I think it's because I had less water and less paint in there. But again, it's just experimenting, right? I know there's just too much, it's too wet. See, and this is still damp. It's still starting to spread out. So it's definitely going to soften, and it's more so here than over here. But I can also that's not giving me what I was looking for. It's still not. We're going to scratch it. Don't be afraid to off with it. Let me show you what I meant by, and that's, you know, trying something like I've never done before. You just go for it. And I've seen them done, and my other spray bottle is much better. It's much finer mist. So when you do that little spray and then you kind of drop your paint in like that, you can get a much nicer, more abstract looking hydrangea flower. So it can be done. It just wasn't done well there. Oh, let's check in on our salt project over here. Look at that. That is in the PR 101, and that is the burnt sienna. Look at the effects you get there. A little bit here in the raw sienna, the yellow ochre, and that may have been that it wasn't still wet enough when I dropped them in, or it could just be that it doesn't move much. Let me try. I'm going to go right here with some more. And then while it's nice and wet, I'm going to immediately drop that salt in so that we can so we can see, because like I said, salts at different times would do different things. And it could be that it was already starting to dry some when the salt touched it. So I'm just going to kind of leave that there, and we'll see. That was a lot of salt, but we'll see. We're going to see what happens. We'll check back in with this in just a little bit. So what I was saying about if you wet it first, and this definitely has a side. One side is textured and one side is very smooth. On at least on that sheet it is. Yeah, that is. One side is really smooth like a hot press. And the other side is textured. I don't know if you guys can see the texture. Yeah, you can see the texture right there. So I like the texture that's on it. All right, my brush I normally use for this is not up here. I'm just gonna grab a big mop brush. This holds lots of water, and I'm just gonna go on the back, and I'm just gonna wet the paper. Okay. So you see that wanted to curl right up on me. Now, if I set that on my desk, lay that out, my desk is not very smooth. If it was a nice, hard, smooth surface, it would lay right down. I'm gonna wet the front, and usually that'll take the curl right out of it and lay it flat. And this is where like people that use like the gummed paper, they would have that wet. This would be on a board that they'd work on, and they would tape it down right to the board. So now if I started working on this like wet and wet, this is going to stay nice and flat. This is perfectly flat now. You can do this with any watercolor paper. Wetting the back of your paper and then basically sticking it to your desk. It will not stay stuck. I can lift that up. So that right there is one way, like if you don't want to tape your paper, tape your paper off, you can wet both sides of it like that. And that will keep it nice and flat. This is now perfectly flat. So now I can come in, and we were talking about how I bet that this Payne's Gray, let's get a little extra. Oh, that's going to be good. I have flicked some on my paper. Let's come in with a moody sky. And this is very wet and wet. It's going to travel. We'll take a little alizarin crimson. I have no idea. This is just, we're just playing. Does it? But I want to soften that bottom edge. Bring that water. If you wanted some just lifting out like almost like some whites of the clouds. It's a moody day there. Yeah, it's nice out here today. Sun's shining, or it was. And we could come back in. And if I want to keep this working, right, just a gentle mist over the top if I need to make sure because you know, everything in the studio likes to dry quick. I'm not sure what the forecast is. I don't know what we're actually supposed to be getting, but it's possible. And of course, as I got further away, clouds get thinner as they move away from us. Now I'm just going to kind of come back where I had tapped those before, and I'm just kind of tapping again so that the way that that dark like shadow under my cloud just came through actually is kind of looking more like it's underneath. I don't know. It's probably being worked too much. It's like one of these days where anything I paint is not going to work, which I don't mind showing you because you know what? You're going to have days where everything you want to paint is not going to work. And it just happens. And just play with it. I'm staring like, where do I want to wreck it next? Where can we go next? Again, I can already feel this paper drying. And cellulose paper will dry faster. So just so you know that. Cellulose paper will dry faster on you than your cotton papers will. I don't know. I just don't know. Maybe we can. Just kind of going over a few places I had a hard edge, which means the paper was probably a little drier there. Oh, that's really dark or really bright, isn't it? It is. It's only paper. That is absolutely correct. It is only paper. And like I said, the cost of this paper, it does not hurt my feelings to experiment and risk possibly, you know, having nothing happen with a piece. Starting to like it a little better. All right, that was alizarin crimson, ultramarine, and Payne's gray. And again, that ended up really bright. The clouds come in all different shapes and sizes, so we're just going to go with it. And I'm going to wet this down lower. And I'm just going to soften them up. But keeping them going horizontally and trying to keep them thinned down. Well, there's the sky. I do have some harder edges that are forming here that I'm not particularly crazy about. So just coming in with just a damp brush, just softening a few of those up. Because I don't want hard edges. See, like right in here. My brush is just damp. There's no more, not really much paint on it. And I'm just going to soften that up. There we go. Now, how about some hills back there? Just darkening up the same color I just used in my clouds. And I know this is wet. I know this is going to kind of travel a little bit. I'm not going to mind because I don't want a hard edge back there. Now I want that one to be a little lighter. There we go. And let's darken this one up just a tiny bit. Do you guys do that? I never mix up enough paint. If anything, it's just made me a better mixer. Oh, thanks for joining us while you could, Rob. Rob says he sees a misty shoreline. Could be. Right? Could be. I'm just grabbing that mop brush again just because the paper is pretty dry. Now the paper feels, you know, it's not 100% dry, but it feels like it has dried. And so now I'm just wetting the bottom of that again. So just kind of keep moving this wet and wet. And you see they've all kind of spread. And I'm going to go a little bit darker. I can lift down a little bit there. It's one of those things where you start to touch it and you go, oh, I shouldn't have touched it. It's some odd terrain. I don't know. I don't know what planet this is on. Could be ours, could be not. See, and I was gonna do just like moody trees, and then I don't know what happened to that idea. But this is what has come out of it. Some spot that I really was not liking. I'm just gonna go right over it. I don't know about his misty seashore there, but or misty shore. I think we've I think we have some moody dunes going on. And they just keep going and going and going. As these dry, they do start to feel more gummy. Like, I probably just need more water on them. I always end up mixing. Do you guys do that with your palette? My palette just like, this could be just one little spot. Not for my palette. It has to like stretch out and grow and make itself known, take over the place. Sketching in where I want my final one to be. Right? And my mountains don't have to be, you know, they're just mountains. This doesn't have to be perfect. This is just playing with the colors. How can I mix them? How well do they mix? You know, those are the kind of things that I wanted to see today. And I think I've accomplished that. I might not have accomplished some masterpieces in painting, but like I said, that doesn't always happen every time you sit down to paint. Sometimes you just learn things. Oh, there we go. I say it is what it is. When it dries, it will probably be lighter than that, I'm sure. But let's check back in on our salt. I'm just going to leave this setting here. Definitely has to dry. The paper's very wet. Our little hydrangea experiment. You see, you could do... I'll have to do this again. I want to practice this because I'm sure I can get this much better with what the idea I had in mind was. But let's look at our salt. Okay, definitely took over. I knew I put a lot of salt on there. So the tiny spots are because it was already getting dry. It would definitely react to salt. This one, our cad red hue, didn't really. And I'm looking, the lemon yellow didn't too much either. The gamboge, slightly. Our alizarin crimson, I would think that that's probably going to be like this guy. That one might have been a little dry. Or it just isn't going to react to the salt that well. I would have to try that one again. But look at the ultramarine blue. That one really reacted, which I was surprised to see because usually that's a granulating color that I wouldn't think I would get as much salt reaction as I did. But I definitely think that this one right here, which again is PR 101, this was the burnt sienna, that gave like some crazy, look at that in there. Gorgeous effects. Nothing really happening here on the Payne's Gray. And then you see those two, some granulation, but not like what I'm expecting, what I would have expected to see. So that tells me that if I want to use colors that normally granulate on me, but I don't want the granulation to happen, this would be a good palette to pick. If you don't mind your paints traveling a little bit, then again, not a problem with this palette. being aware that that alizarin crimson will take off. I mean, you see how some of my mountains are feathering up here, which I don't mind. Maybe there's trees on those hills back there. I don't know. I can't see that far in the distance. All in all, my first impression of this palette is that I definitely would have preferred to see a different color instead of Chinese white. And I would much rather have had like a phthalo blue in here versus the cobalt blue that was the same pigment as the ultramarine dark. But other than that, great colors. We mixed up a variety of colors with them. I was able to get purples. I was able to get some magentas, obviously. So yeah, a variety of different greens. I think this is a good palette. If this ends up in my bag to go outside, I am sure, and these just, I can just push from the bottom and this pops up. And I'm sure I would just replace this half pan. And now that I pull that up, there's actually, the pigment information is on the side of the pans. So I looked it up, but I would not have normally just pulled that out. I don't think that's going to focus. There we go. So your pigment information is on the side of the pans. I like that they do that because if I take this out, I'll know exactly what this goes in to return it. It does say Daler Rowney on the bottom of the half pan, but so all your pigment information is located on the sides of your half pans. That is excellent. I really like that. Aside from that, yeah, I would just pop those two out and replace them with two other colors that I think I would use more. Good palette. I like it. I definitely think that this is going to end up coming outside with me once or twice at the very least. It really, let me clean this off and show you one more time. Well, the top, I'll close it. That doesn't take up much space. That's really easy to pack. That would fit in a pocket. I mean, this is, as I hold it up to my cell phone, it's about as tall as my iPhone, but it's narrower. So if that would fit in a pocket, this would definitely just fit right into a pocket. And something like my little Paul Rubens sketchbook that I've been starting to work in. Yeah. This is definitely a great choice if you like plein air painting. I would recommend it with the caveat that, like I said, I'm not thrilled that your blues are both PB29, with a little bit of white. You already had that. You could have left this color and I could have made this exactly with just these two. I don't need this one. All the others I absolutely see a need for. I would replace that one, call it a day, and this is a fantastic little palette to bring. As far as light fastness, if you're worried about that, out of 4 stars, they're all 3 with the exception of the burnt sienna, which is a 4. So I wouldn't hesitate to use these. And if I'm using them in a sketchbook, it doesn't really matter anyways. So great palette. Thank you. Huge shout out to Tara for sending this. Thank you so much. Again, the little brush that comes with it, I think that's more like if you're going to do some sketching. If I was sitting there and was sketching with my watercolors, that's going to be a perfect brush. It's firm. It has lots of spring to it. It's more like a Kolinsky type brush. It has that snap versus like a squirrel brush, which is soft. I'm not sure what exactly, I didn't see what it said the brush was made of, but either way, I think that's a great little brush. Held its point very well. And I had a really nice point. You could easily get some very fine lines with that. So, yep. I hope that you guys enjoyed hanging out today. I enjoyed being here with you. It's a little early, but I think we're going to duck out anyways because I don't know what else to tell you about this. Next week, I do have an idea for a different small palette that I want to share with you. I don't know if I'll have my other brushes in by then, but yeah, we might take another look at some other small palette for that I have gotten for plein air painting. You, of course, don't need to use it for plein air painting. You can use it for whatever you like in the studio or otherwise. But this, I love that does not take up much space on my desk. And if I remember, I will show you. It's downstairs in my bag right now. I will bring it up to show you. I have a palette that is about this size. It's tiny. It's actually one of these. It's one of these, this size. And I think I fit 20 colors in this palette. 20 colors in this little palette. So yeah, if you want to know how, stay tuned next week and I'll show it to you because I'll make sure I bring it up to the studio. That is, talk about not taking up a lot of real estate for a lot of colors. The only thing is, you can't really get your big brushes in those wells very well. It's going to make a little bit of a mess of your palette, but if you don't mind that, then hey, this might be something you're interested in too. So, all right, I will see you guys next week. I'm not committing to being back every single week yet, but I'm going to try to be back next week. And I am starting to feel better. So that is a bonus. And the energy levels are returning, which is great. And yeah, I'm going to try to remember when I come back. Huge thank you to all my patrons. I can't do this without you guys. You definitely help me make this possible. And I'm going to pop up another video right there that you might like to watch next if you're watching this on the replay. So as soon as it lets me do that, I will pop that up. But thank you very much, guys. Thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed this little first impression of the Daler Rowney Aquafine Travel Set. Yeah, I definitely give it almost 2 whole thumbs up. Almost. Just that blue. It's the only thing that holds me back. That's it. That blue and maybe the Chinese white. Other than that, everything else I loved about it. Thank you so much, Tara, for sending these for us to try out. I greatly appreciate it. You guys have a great day, and I will see you next time. Bye.